Welcome back to the Good Dude, Good Dad podcast. We've been having an awesome conversation. I'm not sure if I'm going to throw it in after this or just let it play all before, and then we'll just actually do the intro now. But we have a special guest today. Well, first of all, I'm Jordan.
I'm Ben, and today's guest is a good friend of ours. I've gotten to know you since 2020.
Yeah.
His name is Guillermo Gonzalez. He is the pastor at Mariner Santa Ana.
Mm-hmm.
And, dude, I'm stoked that you're here.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So Guillermo was introduced. He was introduced to me, I think, through the pastor from Tustin Mariners.
No, so basically I became part of Mariners right when we were maybe 2-3 weeks into having services at your coffee shop.
Okay.
And you know, the decision had been made that I was going to come in and transition that small gathering into a full-on congregation.
Okay.
And one of the people from Mariners, like one of the staff members there, was already having the primary contact with you. And he's like, hey, you know, you need to meet Ben since you're going to be leading here anyways.
Yeah.
And that's how we got introduced. I remember it was just a coffee date right there at the hidden house. And that's how it is.
I didn't know that's when you started with Mariners.
Yeah.
Basically. That's cool.
That was it.
Dude, now look at it. It's to kind of like continue to your intro though is he's one of those dudes that you meet him, you know, and like just so easy to get along with. Obviously I had no idea who he was. The world's falling apart. People hate each other for everything. You're not doing this right, or you're doing too much of this. And, you know, it was kind of a tricky time to navigate as like a small business owner because, man, whatever side you wanted to go with the whole COVID route, it was either like you were being praised by people for being open and letting people live their life if they chose to, or you were getting, you know, just
demolished.
Slandered because you're killing people and you're the problem and all these things. And I remember there was a distinct point, and then I'm going to let you take the conversation, Guillermo, but I remember there was a distinct point where 2020, I was going through some crazy things within our business and personally. I was going through my first lawsuit, and I had just been wrecked by this situation because I've led so diligently, like with my heart and with what I felt was the way to do things, you know, to run my business, to carry myself as a Christian man, as a husband, as a father, and then to just arbitrarily have somebody be able to like say, oh, no, you know, you're getting in trouble for X, Y, and Z. It like rocked me to my core. And again, not knowing like what this COVID thing is and people getting mad at me, people being stoked for us, and then having a church come in and be like, hey, you know, like can we do church here? And that point for me was a big test of, are you going to practice what you preach? Are you willing to put essentially your money on the line, right? Because in those moments, it was money on the line, right? Like, one, you know, people don't like Christians, but two, like during COVID, letting a church gather when people are supposed to not gather. And I just remember it being one of those, you know what? I can't let the situation of this lawsuit dictate the rest of how I do everything. And if I'm willing to say that I will live my life by my faith, then I better be willing to let my business do the same thing. And I remember having the conversation with you and I was like, hey, if we do this and make it that full big scale thing, would you be willing as a church to pay for people's coffee that come on Sunday without obligations, no strings attached? They didn't need to go to Mariners to get the coffee. And he was like, right away, without hesitation, yeah, like we'll do that. Like we'll, you know, so Sundays, that was kind of like the thing where Mariners, you know, took over. They were great to our space. You guys did a lot for us, and they were willing to pay for people's coffee. And for me, I was like, dude, like whether you are a Christian or not, whether you like us or not, whether you want to do all these things or not, during a time where a lot of people were struggling, you get a free coffee, like enjoy it. Like, and that was for me, like the almost a turning point in my own, development as a business owner, as like a Christian man, was kind of like a defining moment. Cause I was like, dude, I can't let the fear of all these people and their opinions and the world's opinions dictate what I think is right and wrong.
Yeah.
But
It was so special to be able to be part of a church plant right in the patio of your coffee shop.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And being able to just make that relationship work where people don't know this, that, you're like, you can use our space and you never charged us
yeah.
for rent, for nothing. It's like, we used your patio every single Sunday and even other days too.
Yeah.
And it was the least that we could do,
Yeah.
to like just pay for people's coffees. And you're right, there was no strings attached. I remember people just, at least hearing stories of people coming to order coffee, and then your baristas telling them, something like it's paid or something like
Yeah.
that, or, and then they would ask, what? And then, the church in the back, something like they've paid for it or something like that.
Yeah.
And some people just from conviction leaving at least a tip or something.
Yeah, that's cool.
Some people just for conviction actually being part of church. Like
Yep.
they're like, okay, God, I'm gonna go and be part of church. And bro, till today, we have members at Mariner Santa Ana that came, or they're still coming because they first came to that experience
Yeah.
of our church.
Yeah, it was worth it, man. And the money thing, it wasn't about money. It was about me doing what I say that I believe, right? And in a time that was, arguably, hopefully, in our lifetime at least,
Yeah.
the worst that it
Yeah.
could be, like in the sense of the just polarizing views on the world. And so for me, it wasn't about money. It was about God has opened doors for me my entire life. We have this thing that has become a community space. Like, you better be willing to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And I genuinely feel like since then, and I'm not trying to be too, Christianese and spiritual right now, but since then, I feel like my walk with the Lord has never been better. My finances have continuously surprised me in ways that as we were talking before we recorded, ways that I don't understand how I can do some of these things. And God's blessing and anointing, I think, has just been very evident in our business and in life at Hidden House as a whole. We're year over year, we're growing.
Yeah.
And, and I can't help but point back to that moment. But if you are a believer, that, there's times that God will use things to develop you in a way that you don't even fully understand and get it. But if you're obedient and you walk through that, to be able to see the blessings that I'm still experiencing every single day, and of course there's still bad that comes with that, right? But that's not God's bad. That's just human life. But Mr. Guillermo,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about yourself and just kind of how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a long story. So I was born and raised in Mexico. And I grew up without a dad. That's what I would, I usually start my story like that. And it was a weird dynamic because I grew up without a dad, but I knew of him and he was somehow around. So basically, my dad emigrated to United States and he would work here. And then he would just basically support his family from United States. And the way he would do this is that he would travel to Mexico to visit us, his family, for 2 days per year.
Oh, shoot.
So one weekend a year, I would see my dad.
Dang.
And that was my whole upbringing, So my perception of my dad was, it was kind of like a Santa Claus perception, right? Because what do you do when you're here in the United States and you show up to Mexico? My dad would show up with a bag, full of toys and clothing, to give to his children and his wife and all these different things. And it was kind of like a Santa Claus experience. Well, Christmas has arrived. And Christmas is a 2-day thing, right? It's Christmas Eve and Christmas Day type of thing. And that was kind of my experience with my dad. And interestingly enough, he had a belly and and a white beard,
That's funny.
And man, just growing up, my dad became like a Santa Claus, like a superhero. like this mystical person that existed. I know of him, and I know he's my dad, you know, and I know that every year I'm going to expect him, I'm gonna see him, and I'm gonna have a relationship with him, only to be shattered 2 days later.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was weird. I didn't know how to. I mean, you know, you guys have kids.
Yeah.
Kids, man, they don't have the language to be able to explain their emotions, you know, like the way how they feel and all that kind of stuff. That was me. I did not know how to express how much that was hurting me. Right? Like superficially, it was happy for those 2 days. Beautiful. My dad, I remember playing on the streets, you know, that's what you do in Mexico, I guess, you know, and it's like, I remember every time I would see like a taxi, I would look into it to see if it was my dad.
Dang.
You know, and there was moments when I would actually see my dad in it, and I remember me and my older brother just jumping, like just so happy. My dad is here. I would look at my friends like, my dad is here, you know, and I would run to the house following the taxi, and you know, I would get into my house, and my mom, you know, we would tell her, hey, dad is here, and then she would stop everything. It was kind of like this, you know, like this superhero arriving from a long journey of battle or something like that, you know. And it was fireworks, it was roses for 2 days.
Yeah.
We'd go out to eat tacos at night, you know. It was beautiful. And dude, the worst days of my life, it was that Sunday or Monday morning, you know, when we had to say bye to my dad. Because my mom would just get a hold of him, and she would beg him, hey, it's okay. We can live under a bridge, or like stuff like that, you know. You know, we just want you to be here. And I remember grabbing my dad by the legs and being like, Dad, please, you know. And man, it was hard. Those were I think the defining moments that in the long run I would come to know as the most the years that most affected me. You know, in the beginning, I don't know this. In the beginning, I'm thinking, I think this is normal, you know. And then, but eventually, that's where I would attribute like the biggest issues of my life came probably from those, you know, from that. So, anyways, long story short, my what I didn't know was that my dad, when he emigrated here, he had put in a request to the government for his family to receive residency. And he had put in that request when I was born. So, you know, I was maybe a few days born, and, you know, and my dad had put in that request. And that request for us to become residents of United States lasted 15 years.
Sheesh.
So when I was around 15, 16 years old, I remember one day my dad wasn't in the house, you know, he was out here. My mom comes from like the mail or something. My mom was waving some sort of envelope, and then she opens it, and then, you know, I didn't make any of it, you know, anything of it. And then all of a sudden she's like, hey, basically pack up your bags. We're moving to United States. What was in that envelope was our resident cards.
Dang.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was 15 years old, 15, 16, something like that. And we all moved following my mom. By that time, it was 4 boys, you know, in the house. And my mom was taking care of all of us.
Dang.
And we emigrated to United States, not by choice. It was just me following my mom and my family. And that's how I ended up here in the United States.
Dang.
So, yeah, I was about 16, 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. And we lived in, you know, with one of my aunts in Anaheim in a 2-bedroom apartment. There was like 20 people there, you know. And man, it was hard. I hated the United States of America. Dude, I can truly tell you, I love United States with all my heart. But in that moment, it was just a culture shock, man. Like, you know, I had no friends. Dude, I lived in Mexico for 15 years. My whole childhood was there, you know. My friends were there. You know, basically my whole childhood. And so now I live in the United States. It's a different culture. I'm going to high school, and I don't know the language.
I said, did you speak English?
No, not even. I mean, you can still tell I have an accent.
Yeah.
You know, I did not know the language. I was going into, you know, I went to high school, and And worst of all, I was now living with my dad.
Oh, damn.
So remember, like by this point, my dad is not really around with like other than like 2 days per year.
Yeah.
Now my dad is in the picture. We're all together, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be awesome. I love my dad, you know?
Yeah.
Only to find out that he's not showing up with a bag full of toys every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My perception of him went from Santa Claus to like just a normal human being, you know? And man, I developed an anger towards my dad. And I mean, man, I hate to say it honestly, but it was a hatred towards my dad. I felt like I hated him. I could not live with him. I was 16, 17 years old. I was going into high school. I lived in a country I did not want to live. I had left all my childhood behind. I am in high school. I don't know the language. I remember seeing a girl, me wanting to talk to her, and I'm like, what am I gonna say? You know, like I don't know anything. And it was just like, it was really, really difficult. And so I had a lot of anger. And in high school, honestly, man, all I did was I was seeking opportunities to get into fights. I was a drug addict at that point too. I developed that in Mexico as I was, you know, I attribute that again, just this desire to try to fit in, this desire to try to be seen and known, you know, that I really didn't receive that. My mom is my hero. She was there the whole time, but it was different. You know, my mom raising 4 boys, and we were not good boys, you know, to her. So, you know, so it was difficult.
Yeah.
And I remember in high school, one day someone kicked the bottle, you know, we were like, I don't know, this hallway, and someone kicked the bottle, like a bottle, and it landed on my feet, just normal.
Yeah.
And I found out grounds to be able to get into a fight with him. You know, and so we got into a fight, and I just wanted it. I wanted it to get into a fight, you know. And so we got into a fight, got sent to the principal's office, and then got sent home, and all these different things, you know. And the following day, I had to take the bus, you know, those yellow buses, you know, to go to school. And the following day, you know, went into school. Everything was pretty normal. After school, I take the bus. It drops me off at my, you know, by my house. We used to live at that point at a mobile home, and I get off the bus and I'm walking, and the person that I had gotten into a fight with, you know, the day before, comes out of like some wall or bushes or something like that with a bat in his hands.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, and you know, he started telling me, "Oh man, let's fight," and all these different things. And I'm over here thinking, dude, I'm a superhero, you know, like I can do this, no problem, you know. And so we were about to get into a fight, and little did I know that, well, I may be exaggerating this, but it felt like this. It was like, man, I want to say at least 10 of his friends. I didn't count them, but it was several of his friends coming out of like this house or some place, everyone holding bats. And I remember I was by myself, and I was like, oh yeah, this is not a good idea. And so I remember turning around, and I started running, and then they were chasing me. I felt like, you know, people hitting me with bats in my backpack and the back of my head, and I was just running and running. And then I got into like my little mobile home community, and that's when I stopped feeling people chasing me. But I just kept on running, you know, and I remember getting to my house. I opened the door, I ran, I walked straight past my parents watching TV, and then I got into the restroom, and I opened the shower, you know, and I got into the shower, and I remember I just sat down, you know, in the shower, and something in me, like something was happening in my heart from that experience. And I remember just sitting down in the shower. By this time, even though my mom was a Christian, I was a skeptical. You know, I was an agnostic, borderline atheist. I didn't really believe in God. And I remember when I was there in the shower, just feeling the water hitting my face. I prayed for one of the very few times I had ever prayed, and I said, God, if you exist, you're the God of my mom. I remember saying that. I said, I don't want this. I don't know why I'm here, you know? And it was just like this very confusing time in my life. So after that shower, I went up to my mom and I told her, hey, I want to go to church with you. And you know, she was like so happy. She was like, I've been praying for this my whole life. And I said, I don't care, just take me to church, you know.
Yeah.
And the following Sunday, I went to church with her, and I remember I had drugs in my pockets, and my perception of God was like, if God does exist, He is this cosmic punisher, this God who, if He's somehow holy, He knows I have drugs in my pockets. He knows all the issues and problems I have in my heart. And I said, I honestly, man, I thought this. I said, as soon as I walk into the church, this is God's house. As soon as I walk into the church, He's gonna kill me. Honestly, bro, like that was my perception of if God existed.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember I walked in already crying. I was like, this is my last day. You know, I'm gonna die. My mom noticed that I was crying, and so she left me, and she went and sat by herself. I think that was very wise of her. And I sat all the way in the back pew, like the very, very last one. And it was so shocking to me that, you know, that I wasn't dead.
Yeah.
And I was at church. And I remember just crying basically the whole service, you know, and I didn't know why God wasn't killing me, to be honest. So anyway, so, you know, that was my first experience of God, that I would say, you know, was a real experience of God.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I was in that church, and I wept the whole service, and, you know, and that's basically what I would attribute the day when I was so impacted by his grace. Remember, I go into church thinking He's supposed to kill me.
Yeah.
And the fact that I went out of the church alive, the only thing that I attributed that to was perhaps this is a God of grace.
Yeah.
You know? And little did I know, with my very limited knowledge of God, that was true. It was God's grace. And so the following Sunday, sorry about that. The following Sunday, I go back to church because I was so impacted by the first Sunday. And bro, I cannot remember a day after that I had not been part of church or anything that has to do with God.
Yeah.
I gave my life to Jesus at that moment. I said, hey, this is a God that has mercy on me. And I remember even that second Sunday that I went, the preacher was talking about how God was a father. And it just sort of everything began to make sense to me. You know, I was like, here I am struggling about my father. And my dad I disagreed with him in so many different ways, in his decisions, you know, and only to find out that I have a better dad, you know, that this whole time I've had a good dad.
Yeah.
That was God. And the idea that God was a father just completely changed my life, you know, and that's when I just gave my life to Jesus, and you know, I just went from there. And then now I'm a pastor.
That's so
Wow.
cool. Dude,
Yeah.
I want to go back to like you moving here as between 15 and 17 years old to like you said, a country that you didn't like, you didn't know anything about, you didn't speak the language, and going to high school.
Yeah.
High school in itself is
Yeah.
hard, right? Like for us growing up here, high school was a point where you're like, oh shoot, dude, like you want to fit in.
Yeah.
You want to, like you said, be seen, known, and heard, right? You want to be liked. You want to talk to the girls. You want to be cool. You know, you want to be like the big dog.
Totally.
How did you even learn English? Like at that point, you
Yeah.
know, like that's a genuine question. Like,
It really is, actually. And that to me is it's a very big accomplishment, at least for me.
Especially when you're that old already.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'm in high school, and and to make matters worse, when you come here, especially in California, I don't know if it's true for the rest of the states, but in California, when you come into high school and English is your second language,
Yeah.
they put you in classes called ESL,
Yes.
English as a second language.
Yeah.
And what all that is I think it's a nice attempt to, you know, to try to assimilate people and all that kind of stuff. But in practice, at least to me, I'm sorry if there's someone more expert than me in this,
Yeah.
it's just my experience. In practice is the worst thing you can do, because what happens is that they just put you in a class where everyone knows the same language.
Yeah.
Like literally everyone in my class spoke Spanish, you know, and they all communicate in Spanish. And it's like if I was in Mexico.
Oh.
And so it made it worse for me to learn English, you know, like it doesn't help me.
Yeah.
You know, and so anyways, so I struggled a lot. But I remember, so I came here when I was in junior. That was in my junior high school. I barely made it to my senior year. And in my senior year of high school, they put me in this English class. And I remember my teacher, I remember her last name. I don't know if I'll ever see her. She's one of my heroes till today. Her name was Miss Buttry. And she immediately realized that she was dealing, that in her class there was a boy that was isolated and shy, did not, like, embarrassed of who he was, and every word that came out of his mouth. Every single other student knew perfect English, spoke it well. Everyone was participating in class. I was all the way in the back, like, just like, do not look at me. Please don't look at me, you know? And dude, her compassion towards, like, you know, approaching me, and at the same time, the truthfulness, because she pushed me.
Yeah.
I remember my graduating day, like, you know, barely graduating. That's a whole different story too. The day I graduated high school, she comes up to me and she says, Guillermo, you need to do the following. You need to obey me. Now I come from a culture where your teachers you obey. You know?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, as a teacher, you know. And so she said, when you go home, you must watch TV in English, you must read in English, and you must speak in English. Do not be embarrassed. It doesn't matter how shy you are and how shy you get. You must do it. And I remember she was the only one that's ever told me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I felt seen. I was like, that's beautiful. I hated it. I hated the command because I don't want to speak.
Yeah.
I feel like when I speak, everyone's making fun of me, you know? But she had the guts to tell me the truth and to love me at that level. And I remember saying, I'm going to do that. And that's exactly what I did. And so for the following few years, that's basically what I did, man. I was like, you know what, man? I'm just going to have to speak English.
Yeah.
And that's all I did with a very limited language that I had. I found myself a friend in college. The funny thing about this friend is that by that time, I was already going to church.
Yeah.
Barely. My life was changing. And I went to college, and I remember I invited this guy to church. Full on Latino, Hispanic guy, but grew up here, perfect English, all that stuff, and also perfect Spanish. And I remember making him my friend, invited him to church. He gives his life to Jesus.
Dang.
And I go up to him at college and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna ask you for a favor. And I said, bro, I need to talk in English. I need to speak can I do this with you? And would you promise me that you won't make fun of me?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And he looks at me for the first time. The whole time in my mind, I'm thinking, this is like, people will make fun of me.
Yeah.
His response led me to believe otherwise. He's like, what? Why would I make fun of you? You know, like, dude, no. And then he was so kind and helping me. And I remember talking in English with him and messing up a bunch, and he would help me. Till this day, he's one of my best friends.
That's
and he
cool.
comes to my church. I'm in Santa Ana. Like, he's all there. And so, yeah, I guess that's how I learned it.
That's so
Yeah.
cool, though.
We have in our restaurant, we have a guy he just wants to learn English so bad. And so he's constantly like, how do I say this? Like, like the other day, he was like, I was like, hey, can you watch this for me? He's like, oh, just a moment. He's like, a moment, a minute, a minute. And I was like, both. I was like, you're good.
Yes.
I was like, either one's good.
They work.
And it's fun, like in an attempt, because I remember, so my family, my grandma's from Guadalajara, and when she came over, she said, yeah, it's that same thing. She always felt nervous about speaking. And so my attempt has always been to, like, I try to speak Spanish back, and I know I'm horrible. So, like, I just full send, and they laugh and they have a good time. They think it's great.
Totally.
But
I'd say you do it all the time, though. Jordan makes that effort with, like, our cooks in the kitchen.
That's cool.
Like, he'll take the orders in Spanish.
Beautiful.
I try.
Yeah.
I try.
But that shows the level, like you're speaking of, right? Like, Americans sometimes have a bad rap of like, oh no, you're going to do what we do. And I think it's a really cool attempt that you do because I mean you've gotten better at doing that.
I've tried. I just like, I don't know. It's for me, it's a mutual respect thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's the same thing that you're talking about. I don't want them to be afraid to like try to learn English too if they want to. You know, and it's anyway. Enough about me. To go back, you were saying that like when you went, you gave your life to the Lord, and at that time you were still a drug addict. Like, what did that change look like? Because I've said this before in another episode. Some people, they think that like, or some people, it actually is this way. God touches their heart, everything changes the next day. You're a completely new person. A lot of people, that's not the case. It's a slow process. Yeah. It's a learning. So how did that kind of happen? Like, what kind of things did you battle with in that space? And how did that happen?
Yeah, when I gave my life to Jesus, I knew that I needed to stop doing some things that I was doing. One of them was, just the usage of some drugs. And I remember, man, my experience on this was definitely not the slow one. It was actually the fast one.
Like the radical transition?
It was basically from one day to the other. And I remember, I mean, it's not that I did not struggle the following day, with the desire. But I just made it up in my mind. I'm like, this doesn't seem to be the best thing for me. And if what the Bible says is true, that I can trust in him and he will help me, then I either believe that or not.
Yeah.
And I remember, I get the point, right? Like there's sometimes the slow process, and that's beautiful. For me, it was just the opposite. I was like, I just can't do this. And God, you need to help me. Yeah. And I remember, of course the desire was there and all that kind of stuff, but I just made it up in my mind and in my heart that I was going to follow Jesus, and that if I was going to do that he was going to be there to help me. And I genuinely, truly, man, I genuinely just trusted him. That's what a good dad would do to me, and he's a good dad, and he'll be here. And I believed it. And call it like childlike faith. I think that was, and I think that helped. So
that there's so much, and I ask that because the process is different for everyone else, but that brings like that radical change also gives some people just so much hope. Because there's people there's out there, maybe they're listening now, they're just at the end of the rope, and they're like, I need change, but I need change now. I need a drastic change in my life because I'm not sure if I can do one more day of it. And just the fact that you're like, yeah, maybe it was childlike faith. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was that next day. It's funny. I was just on a podcast yesterday telling them that when I was going in for my stroke, I made one simple prayer and I was like, dear God, you just got to figure this out. And instantly I felt hope rush through my body. And in that moment, I wasn't scared anymore. I was like totally fine and knew everything was gonna be okay. And it's like some people just need that radical right now hope, and just to know that it is out there, like it is possible that God can change your life in a second and in a moment. When he just touches you. So anyway,
I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
But one thing we sent you a list of questions, obviously, but I think after hearing you in your upbringing, because I didn't know a lot of that. And that's something that we talk about all the time that we love about this specific podcast is the setting of this gets conversations. Like, I didn't know that. And I've known you for 4.5 years now. But one thing I think, obviously the podcast is Good Dude, Good Dad, right?
Yeah.
And our whole goal is to be able to share life experiences of people from different backgrounds and different ways of life and different ways of upbringing in hopes of maybe helping somebody, right? Like whether they're in a space where they're trying to figure it out, or they don't believe in God, or they don't have a job, or they want to be a good father, they want to be a good husband. Like these life experiences are what help. And for you, I think the question I would love for you to, the last question that I would love for you to answer, because I know we got to wrap up, but you had a hard time with your dad.
Yeah.
You had an upbringing where you said he was this Santa Claus figure,
mythical.
Thank you. Goodness gracious. Mythical creature, right? And your whole childhood was like looking forward to that moment, just like a kid would with Christmas. When you moved here and now you have your dad back, right? You caught, you're in it, you disagreed, you had all these things. What about your childhood and the way your dad chose to make those certain choices drove you to be the father that you are.
Yeah.
Like how did you take those experiences? Because Jordan and I have both talked about it on this podcast. We had fantastic fathers, like fantastic father figures. Like I had the best dad I could have ever asked for, in every way, right? Not just the provider, the sternness, the discipline, the kindness, the love, but he was so much more, right? Because it's your dad. It's like it's your, for every little boy, it's usually like your idol, right? Bad term, but they're that person for you. Like, how did your childhood dictate like what you wanted to be as a dad?
Yeah, totally, man. Man. So what? So my dad. Here's the interesting thing about my dad. We're really good friends now, dude. Like I love my dad. I would take a bullet for him, and I know he would do the same for me. He's an awesome, awesome guy, and even just having known and taken the time to know a little bit more about him, I can see why I don't agree with a lot of it. But bro, who's perfect?
Yeah.
As dads, man, none of us are perfect. The Bible even says that. It's like, man, Jesus gives the example. He's like, if your son comes and asks you for a piece of bread, you don't give him a rock.
Yeah.
If your son comes and asks you for a piece of like a fish, you don't give him a scorpion. And then he turns it around and he's like, if you've been a pretty bad dad, now imagine your dad, like your father in heaven, And so, man, we're not perfect. And this is a journey, that's taken me years to be able to just heal from, and to be able to see my dad in light of his past too. Like, I mean, in our conversations, little did I know of his past.
Yeah.
He also grew up without a dad, his dad was actually an alcoholic, and he would beat up his wife, my grandmother, and my dad would actually see that happening.
Yeah.
And so like there's possibly some trauma. Now, I never saw my dad doing that kind of stuff. So even in that generational curse, he broke it. Like, there was an improvement that happened progressively, and I don't agree with all the decisions, but as a father, he made some decisions that he needed to make that he thought were the proper ones, and and it is what it is. But it definitely did teach me some things now that I'm a dad.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I struggled in the beginning, I think. And maybe I'm still struggling. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this out.
We all are.
Yeah. I think I'm still trying to figure this thing out. But for sure, one of the things that inevitably for me, it's a high value as a dad is presence.
Yeah.
I think presence is important. Like I may not have it all figured out. I don't even know if I give all the right counsel to my kids, but I think they know that I'm there, like they can see it. And I think it's important that they can trust that dad is going to be around, that he's going to be there. And even if it's just to cry together type of thing.
Yeah,
man, when I was studying for, just for ministry, I came across a story that changed my life, and it has changed the perspective I've had as a of how I am as a dad. There is a story that someone tells that this person was walking on, like, you picture a street on this side of the sidewalk, like let's say on the left side of the sidewalk, this guy is walking, and then on the other side of the street, on the other sidewalk, there is a dad and there is a son, and they're both walking together, and this guy on this other side of the street, he's just looking at them walking together. Somehow he finds it interesting that he should just stare at them. And as they're both walking together, like, parallel to each other, the person on the left, he notices that the dad all of a sudden stops, and he stops his son. And then he looks at him, and then he picks him up. Like he actually grabbed his son and he picked him up. He lifted him up in midair. And as he's in midair, he tells him, "Son, I love you." He gives him a hug. He puts him down, and then they just continue walking normal. And then the person that observed this, he asked the question. He said, "What is the difference between the son walking next to his dad and the son being picked up in midair and being told that he is loved?" And then he said, in Christ, like in God, there's a massive difference. The difference is because there's no difference technically speaking. The son is still the son if he's walking next to him or if he's in midair. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like by title, by identity, you could say he's still the same person. This is the son. But when he's in midair, not only is he still a son, but he's experiencing his sonship.
Yeah.
You know, and that impacted me. And that's when I began to think that there really is a difference between, you know, like knowing that you have a dad and actually knowing your dad.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like experiencing your sonship,
Yeah.
experiencing your relationship with that father. And that story has impacted me in that way. I think that my style or what I value a lot, at least in my relationship with my kids, is that. Again, I don't think I'm not perfect at all, but I picked them up.
Yeah.
And I put him up in midair, and I look at them and I say, "I love you."
Mm-hmm.
And it's so awesome, man, when you begin to see the results of that. You know, like you come home and dad is here.
Yeah.
You know, and I love, like, there's that expressiveness, you know. And it can't be something passive, you know, like that's something you have to work towards.
For sure.
You know, like you can't be passive about this. I was just listening to, we just had a message actually this last Sunday at Mariners Church, our senior pastor, Eric. The title of the message was, it was on masculinity. And it's so interesting that, you know, that you texted me about this and coming to a show or, you know, to a podcast that the title of it is Good Dude, Good Dad.
Yeah.
This is something that has to do with men.
Yeah.
You know, and he was saying something that I thought was very, you know, it was very key. He was talking about how, you know, this whole idea that in society you have like this toxic masculinity and stuff like that in itself has become toxic.
Yeah.
Now it's like, dude, you know, it's like we actually need good men. We need people, men that are men. Now, the definition of that, I think our society and our culture don't have a good definition of what that is.
No.
And that's what keeps on pointing me back to the scriptures, man. I cannot function outside of the navigation system of the scriptures and the faith that I have in Christ. Like, to me, that is what makes sense.
Yeah.
Because even the definition of like what it means to be a man, I believe that the scripture gives us a better one.
Yeah.
The definition of good. I mean, think about the title, right? Good dude, good dad. Like, what is good? You know, like that has to be anchored somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone has to give us that definition, you know, like, and it can't be cartoons or something like that, you know, and to me is Jesus. And so anyway, so I think that that's how it helped me. Like, in spite of the fact that I had trouble in the beginning of my life and my relationship with my dad, in spite of all that, I think that there was something good that came out of it.
Yeah.
And the good of it was that it exposed me to the need of what it means to be present, you know, of the necessity of my kids experiencing their sonship, you know, their relationship with their dad. I think that's important.
Dude, that's powerful. And I love that you ended it that way because, again, we say it all the time, but man, the power of a father, not a father like you said of, oh, yeah, that's my dad.
Yeah.
But a present father.
Yeah.
Those are two different things in two different worlds, right? You can have a dad who's not a father.
That's true.
Right? They just were the donor that
That's right.
got you there.
Yeah.
But to be a present father, it's something Jordan and I constantly talk about, we constantly work on, and we say it in a way where it's not to be like, oh, look at us, we're present fathers. But more importantly, it's because we genuinely believe, and it sounds like you, and then we'll wrap up, but it sounds like, you know, we all believe in this room right now the power of a present father.
Totally.
And we get our guide and our example and our playbook through the father.
Intentional father, too.
And, you know, and I would say that even if your experience was not, you know, like you grew up maybe just like me, right? Your experience of a father relationship wasn't that good one. Or maybe you're not a father, you know, or maybe you're a girl, like a woman, you know. If you believe that it's a good thing for kids to succeed in life. And that I understand needs definition, but just in the basic sense, like maybe kids, being able to get a job, being able to have an education, being able to be respectful and all that kind of stuff, like just basic things that a citizen of any country should be able to do to be just good people. I think that virtually everyone believes that's a good thing, whether you believe in God or not, whether you're a dad or not, whether you grew up with a good dad or not. If you're one of those people, like, man, there are statistics. Like, I mean, you don't even have to believe in the Bible, like, at all. There's just statistics, like sociological statistics that show that the presence of a dad or a father figure in the home, it is the single most important indicator that a child will do just fine in life.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have, and the statistics don't even show that you have to be like, like an educated dad, or you have like a dad that makes this amount of money. Not even that. It just says, like, the statistics show that if you just have the presence, of a father figure in the home, they will be just fine. The opposite is also true. The vast majority of the problems we have right now in our society have been caused because you were sharing with me, Jordan, just a few moments ago, even just experiences of like how people and how dads just picked up and left.
Yeah.
And I was, again, our senior pastor brought up this, this statistic in his sermon where the single common denominator for why even it's just in suicide, it's attributed to people that pretty much grew up without a father figure in their house.
Well, dang, we appreciate you, man. We could have you back on another day to like unpack some more.
I feel like
of this.
I'm just getting started.
Dude,
I know.
yeah, no, we're gonna have to have you back again because, like you said at one point, I forget what you're talking about earlier. That's a whole other story. I'm like, man, I want that story. Though.
Yeah.
I want it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
And that's why we love this podcast again, man. But we just want to say thank you. We'll tag you in it. Jordan, another great episode.
We'll put your info down below. I'll get all that from you. But yeah, thank you again. And remember, be a good dude, be a good dad.